Welcome to the Roar Mindset, Leading Through Chaos. I'm Peter Brandberger, and I help leaders embrace chaos to turn disruption into an advantage. Each episode brings stories and strategies to help you stop fighting disruption, lead with clarity, and thrive in uncertain times. Today's episode is the second part of my conversation with Chris Kelly, a global technology leader and former Intel executive whose career spanned engineering, product development, international leadership, and large-scale organizational transformation. If you missed part one, I encourage you to pause and go back to enjoy it. In part two, we pick up the discussion on radical honesty and authenticity. During his time in Intel, he was asked to lead the Malaysia Design Center at a moment of deep uncertainty. Trust had eroded, leaders were leaving, and the site was questioning its future, even wondering if it would be shut down. Chris takes us inside that experience and shares how he rebuilt the confidence, developed talent, and guided a 1,600-person organization through disruption. We discuss several leadership practices that matter even more in uncertain environments: being honest about capability, resisting the pressure to overpromise, and building trust through consistent action. He also talks about headcount as a false measure of success, the dangers of taking on work you cannot deliver, and why access, visibility, and openness matter so much in an anxious organization. We close with reflections on authentic leadership, what remains after you leave a role, and one of Chris's favorite metaphors for leadership from the world of soccer, or as he says, real football. Enjoy part two of my conversation with Chris Kelly.
Yeah, we can talk about the Malaysia one a little bit. It's funny. I was listening I listened to Ahmed, and Ahmed was our Malaysia employee number one over there. I have a long-standing relationship with Malaysia, the tech industry in Malaysia, and then having worked closely with them for 15 years and then relocating there. I lived there for almost 5 years. It was a real honor to be asked to go over there to help the team. For those who don't sort of know the story with Malaysia, Malaysia is a mid-income country, independent since the late 50s. Malaysia's been a destination for electronics manufacturing and then increasingly design and development over the course of its history. It's a country that has a strong educational legacy and infrastructure legacy. It's probably the only good things that come out of being colonized by the British. Pretty much everything else is not good. But they were left with a strong sort of Western-oriented education system and infrastructure from the British that they were then able to build on. I'd say business government friendly place to operate. And the people there are wonderful. So Intel's been in operation there since 1968. It was Intel's first overseas site. Intel has a very long history of operating in the country. These site relationships in large companies are complicated. Site relationships typically they're initially seen as a place to put work that is not deemed needed to be done in a higher cost geography. And that works for a while. And then human nature takes over. And the people that are doing that work want to be able to climb up the value chain and do more valuable things. And I think that's natural. So this dance has been going on between Intel Corporate and Intel Malaysia for over 50 years now. I was there for the 40th anniversary. They just had their 50th anniversary. It's kind of amazing to think about that. I mean, Intel's presence in Malaysia is older than me, and I'm old, right? So my job was, we had an R&D group over there, and the R&D group over there was comprised of all aspects of chip and platform design and development, manufacturing test design, architecture, software development, something around 1,600 employees. The leader of that group, is a good friend of mine, ran afoul on a project and left the company. But no matter how it happened, it doesn't really matter how it happened. The leader was asked to leave or left. There was a crisis over there. We had built a team of very capable people, and they were doing important work for the company, and they were leaving. And there was a massive crisis of confidence, both because the leaders were leaving, but also because The site felt like they were basically falling down the league table of sites where work would be placed. It's a long explanation, but the context is important, I
No, a
think.
lot of uncertainty,
Yeah,
maybe concern about an end of an era.
it was a very nervous time. I remember when I accepted the job, I was making a phone call late at night from here in Portland back to the leaders saying, "Hey, I'm really excited to be there to get started, to work with all of you guys. I know the site well. I've been there a lot. I think we know each other, so we'll have an opportunity to accelerate." And the first question I got was, "Are we going to get shut down?" And it was a genuine question. It wasn't a throwaway, let's see what he says question. It was a genuine fear that we're going to get shut down.
Yeah.
And so that was the environment in which came and was the leader of the R&D organization. So over the course of the 4+ years I was there, we had some trust rebuilding to do. I didn't directly manage the entire teams. I was sort of like the site manager. And so I had something like 26, 25. It was in the mid 20s number of constituents that had people there that were doing jobs for them that I then set about working to manage and build trust with. And that was the first job, Peter, was look, you guys need to realize that trust has been lost. It's super easy to lose it. It's really hard to gain it. Everything that we do from this point forward is going to be about building trust. And we also need to realize that we need to be super honest with the constituencies that employ people here. Oftentimes sites like that will go and offer their resources to work on a project aspirationally. We would really like to do this. It would be really good for the site if we could go do that. And people convince themselves that that's the way forward. If I can just get this big project, I'll figure out a way to do it, and then we'll be good. Well, I think there's some specific issues with every site, but there was some, specific issue in Malaysia around capacity and getting overall engineering capacity. It's not India. It's a country of 25 million people, not 1.4 billion people. So you can't necessarily just take on a project and staff up people overnight like is easier to do in a place like India or China and expect a good result. So you have to be super honest with yourself about what capabilities you have and plan carefully as to what capabilities you want to then have. I used this term before, like see the world. We need to be really clear about seeing the world as it is, not as we would like it to be. And the world as it is means we need to be able to do these three things and build trust. We need to do them again and again and again to where it's not questioned. And we need to find some ways, even outside the core business of the site, which was designing and validating chips, to build trust. In large companies, there's lots of different ways to do that. One of the things that was a problem when I took over was this thing called controls. So controls are how well controlled is confidential information. If you do an audit, and Intel had facilities to be able to do audits of things like this, how well do you follow the rules that have been set out around how you control confidential information? Or when you deal with suppliers, how well controlled is it that you deal with those suppliers? Those are typically run by the finance organization, and they had a bunch of they were called AAA. Think of them as red flag findings of
Right.
problems in controls. Folsom had the same problem, by the way, and I'll tell that story in a minute. So our controller, Wade Toller, a good friend of mine, and I recognized that this was a way that we could build trust. So we set about probably overcompensating on controls. It drove the site crazy. They're like, why are we worried about this stuff? And my explanation was always, look, we're finding every way that we can to build trust. The problem with things like being seen as out of control is that's all you do is respond to these ARs. Actions required in non-Intel people. And when you're in control, you don't have to deal with that stuff. You're free to do your day job. So we're going to nail this thing. We're going to do it in a systematic way. And then we're going to use that as a way of demonstrating that we're in control. Turns out over 3 or 4 years, we got to the point where not only were we in control, we were seen as the example site, and we were asked by all the other sites, including sites in the US, by the way, where Folsom had a big problem subsequently, to teach them how to do this because it was seen as an example of, things being done well. So that's a good example of something that was really uncomfortable for a while, where we turned it into an advantage and an opportunity. And then people in the site really felt like It's funny, right? You feel a sense of pride about,
Yeah.
hey, we built this system. This is something we're proud of, and we can teach others. One other story I'll relate is there was a VP or a CVP that wanted to start a new initiative, and they came to us in Malaysia. They went to Taiwan, and they went to India. And basically said, "Here's what I need. I need to build a team. We're going to do a new chip design and development. We need to be up and running in 6 months, and I need 150 engineers to go do it." I think this is when when Intel was trying to do phones. I think this was a phone
Yeah.
chip, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So the epilogue is whatever happened didn't work. But at the time, it was like, okay, this is the future. So the discussion at the site was like, we need to do this. We have to be a part of this. Phones are the future. If we don't get in the ground floor, all the things that you say. And I remember being in a meeting, again, back to our meetings topic, and being just brutally honest with the group. I'm like, so guys, let's just be honest with ourselves. Do we really think, without disrupting the existing things we're doing, because that's a non-starter, do we think we can hire, train, and make effective 150 people inside 6 months to deliver on a new project, or do we think that is likely to fail? And after a while, after some denial, people came around to the realization that that probably wasn't in our capability set. So in the past, that site would have said yes. And what would have happened is there would have been a bidding war between sites, basically to see, it's like name that tune. I can do that chip
Right.
it's actually what I called it. I can make that chip in 60 heads. No, I can do that
Yeah.
chip in 50 heads.
I
And
can
that's
do it in half the
irrational.
time.
Yeah, exactly. That's irrational. So we went back, and I took, it wasn't just me, it was me plus the leaders of the teams. We went back to the requester and said, you know something? Thank you for asking. If I'm honest, we can't do that. If you change the conditions this way, I know I could do it.
Mm.
If you're willing to make this change this way, if you're asking me to do that and build a team in 15 months, I know I could do it. But if you're asking me to build a team in 6 months, I don't feel I'll be successful for you. And then we said, the advantage, by the way, if you're willing to spend the time and build this team, is I know for a fact that the retention, the amount of people that will stay and not rotate and leave on this team will be much, much higher than if you go try and build it elsewhere in 6 months. It'll be super transactional because that's what it takes to be able to actually retain value employees.
Mm.
And this is specific to our culture. I remember the leader being disappointed, but then coming back, 2 or 3 months later and kind of going, you know what, thank you, because, we tried this another way and it didn't exactly work. And I just want to thank you guys for being super honest. And, we subsequently built that genuine relationship with that leader. It's on me. It's not individuals in the Malaysia site, but it was on behalf of the Malaysia site. And the leader that's there today is also a good friend of mine. This leader takes this message and is very purposeful about commitments and very honest about what the site can do, knowing darn well that the short term is almost always a more important tell in the long term, rather than snap at a short term thing and then end up having to clean up a mess.
Right. I like that as the vision on the long-term relationship, long-term
Yeah.
team, because also, I want to hire a team and then have to fire a team. I mean,
It's
the
the
people
worst
who
ever,
are
right?
150 people who could have been hired and then fired because there was no next project or whatever.
Yes.
And the honesty is commendable for sure. I'm sure it was a difficult
It was
conversation.
not an easy conversation. It was the hardest part of that conversation was with the leaders in Malaysia, right?
Mm.
Disappointing the folks in the US that were asking was a momentary disappointment. Getting the team in Malaysia to sort of get, people jealous, right? So they see another site doing this thing, and the other site talks about being able to do this thing and hiring and all the rest, and people get jealous.
Yeah.
And
Especially with
employee,
hiring.
yeah, and people ask, and they're
They
like,
got headcount. We don't. Yeah.
yeah, how come we don't have this head count? Well, I actually, that raises another interesting point for those that work in large companies as well, large companies. Head count is not success. Head count is not your metric. Often at a company like Intel, and I think other large companies, headcount ended up becoming like a proxy or a mnemonic for success. Well, I
Hmm.
got more heads and therefore I'm successful. At the end of my career, I think you were in the same boat, Peter. I actively did not want more headcount than I needed to get the job done
Yeah.
because I realized that that wasn't a measure of my own success. I can say it was X number of heads and feel good about that momentarily, but it's just an ego hit. It's not a productivity outcome.
Right. And plus, it leads to, I mean, to me, the endemic at Intel of the up and down of
That's right.
hire fire that happens.
That's right.
And then personally, is leading, you hire people and then you have to fire people. It's not fun firing people,
At all.
especially if you've overhired and you've overhired. It's like, yeah, yeah, we overhired.
Yeah. And the incentives sometimes to overhire were pretty clear, right?
Hmm.
We're strong. Sometimes we were told to do it because of bureaucratic reasons. It was, well, if we don't do it now, we'll never get to do it. That's a terrible
Yeah.
reason to hire somebody.
Or I think related to that is you need to hire now so you know who to fire.
That's
Like,
also was said to me at times,
yeah.
right?
I mean, not know who to fire. It's not at a personal level, but like,
But
hey,
have the yeah.
we need
Hmm.
to go above our capacity because we're going to be asked to go down, and then it will
Yeah.
continue to have what we quote need.
I'm anticipating that there will be a time when we will be asked to reduce. Therefore, I need to be able to have a bulk of people where I can sort out, what will
Yeah,
happen at that time.
perfect.
Because I'm going to be asked regardless. Therefore, I mean, I mean, talk about authenticity and honesty. How can you be honest with a group of people if you know that's the case? I mean, I've had
Yeah.
employees ask me directly this question. Did we overhire just so we could reduce? And that's a difficult leadership challenge because you don't want to lie,
Right.
but at the same time, if you know something, you should say it.
Hmm.
So I would typically handle that something like, well, I don't know what's going to happen 6 months or a year from now. I don't know. It does stand to reason if you look at our financial results that maybe we're not doing as well as we have been. I'm going to give you guys the same advice I give to everybody all of the time. This is an old Lintel one you'll remember that we don't talk about very much anymore. You own your own employability is
Yeah.
what we used to say. That doesn't mean I want you out looking for jobs all the time, but I do want you to be aware of the value that you're adding and what help I can provide you to accelerate that value. And then I always say, look, people may promise you things, but there ain't no promise anybody can make in a big company that you can believe. It's just that simple.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, yeah, even up at the CEO level.
Even at the CEO level. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's sad because it sort of detracts from this authenticity and honesty. All you can do is be as honest as you know how to be with the purview that you have. And if the company itself feels like it's being dishonest to its employees, I think the best outcome for a manager, for a leader,
Hmm.
is to turn up the honesty with them as much as you can. One of the things that I got to do in Malaysia that I really liked is I got to do the bum for non-Intel people. The bum
Yep.
is the business update meeting. It's a quarterly ceremony meeting that we would have where leaders would gather groups, or in our case, the site, and we would have some material that we would present. Typically, it would be like an update from the CEO or an update from another leader. We would have awards, and we would have some presentations about what's happening, in and around the company. It was a way of informing the employees what was happening. Really good practice. Really, really good practice. But my favorite part of the bum was we always spent a good half an hour on Q&A. And I had the honor of being the person standing in front of the room in Penang Building 12 in the big auditorium. It was my
Hmm.
job to stand in front of the room and field questions. It's a responsibility certainly, but I don't treat it as such. I treated it more like it was an honor to be answering questions. And employees have difficult questions. And my job, every time I stood up in front of that group, I did it for 4.5 years without fail every quarter. Every time I stood up in front of that group, my mindset was be honest and everything else will take care of itself. If you give one even slightly dishonest answer to a question in front of an auditorium of people, then be prepared for the mob mentality to start, right? The pitchforks
Yeah.
and the torches come out,
Yeah, because they
appropriately
can
so.
sense the energy behind it,
They
right? Or the
know,
lack of energy behind it. And they're like, oh, that was inauthentic. Like
they
you just feel
know.
it.
Yeah, they
Even the
know.
same words. Like,
Yes. And so, sometimes I would say stuff that wasn't company policy or party line. It was something that I believed to be true. Or I would say, look, our policy is X, but let me tell you what I think. And again, it was an honor to do. I'm no bluffing. It was an honor to have the opportunity to go do this and interact with people. And those moments are important to be able to increase the honesty and authenticity. Another thing that I did whilst I was there, Peter, was the buildings that we were in, were packed tight. We were hiring people. We were fortunate at the time to be hiring people, and there wasn't enough spaces for people to sit. So I was the leader of the group. I was always going from building to building or group to group and talking to people. Sometimes I'd be working with the government, so it'd be in KL or whatever. And like I gave my cube up because I was never there anyway. Most of the times leaders have these large, cubes with an admin sitting in them and all the rest. And like they were literally never there. Where is so and so? Well, they're here. So I gave my cube up. I was either in a conference room or more often than not, if I needed to get some work done, I would just go down to the cafe. And that was a purposeful move to be seen and be open to be approached.
yeah,
Right? So like, if I needed to work, I would go sit in the corner and someone would approach me and say, "Look, let's schedule something because I really need to get this thing done now." But more often than not, if someone came up and had a question or whatever, that's why I'm there. That is my purpose, is to be able to
yeah.
answer questions and interact with people.
It's quite literally an open door policy. Like there is
Quite
no door. There's
literally
no
an open
walls.
door. Quite literally an open door. I think when leaders go hide, employees know it. They know when they're trying not to be seen.
Hmm.
When leaders are visible, it's calming for people. But I think it's also a way of ensuring people know that you and they are as invested as each other. There's mutual investment
Yeah,
in the relationship and in the enterprise. You know.
that's nice.
So anyway, that's Malaysia. Easily my favorite job at Intel. Easily my favorite job. Really enjoyed my time over there, and the site's thriving. I would like to think I played a very small part in that. The team that's there managing the site is doing an amazing job. We were able, whilst I was there, to significantly increase the leadership capability and capacity of the site. Used to be in the old days where we would send expatriates over to take up leadership positions. We don't need to do that anymore because the capability and capacity of leadership of the site is increased to the level where it's not
Yeah,
really required anymore. And I think that's probably the one thing I'm most proud of my time over there. It's really not about me. It's developing the capability of these people I care very deeply about, and now they're an integral part of that company and will continue to be so. That's great.
yeah. Well, it's a sign of a great leader that you can, when you step out, the systems and people around you and the work that you've done remains,
Yeah,
right? It's a
thank you. Yeah, I
different form of a legacy, right? It's
yeah,
not the legacy of accomplishments or accolades. I mean, there is that, but also that it's still an enduring, like Jim Collins would call a great company, right?
yeah,
Good to great.
yeah,
And
right.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's all we can strive for as individuals is just sort of like influence, be a part of something bigger than ourselves, and genuinely and authentically interact with people. I mean, maybe I'll end the story this way. I happened to go back to Malaysia on vacation a year ago. Is that a year ago now? Yeah, it was a year ago. So it was around this time year ago. We spent 10 days in Malaysia and other places in Asia. And man, my calendar was full. I had the opportunity to connect with people in that still work at Intel and some other folks in the ecosystem there that don't work at Intel. The positive energy, the work that they do there, it was just really gratifying. Again, not about me, but just to see how that site continues to thrive. It was really cool, sort of to come back
yeah,
and build on those authentic relationships that you have. I mean, one goes over there and is sort of transacting all the time, then it's sort of like you could come turn up in Penang and nobody would know. I'm pretty confident if I turned up in Penang and didn't tell anybody, that they'd find that I was there and we'd have a great time anyway.
Exactly. Yeah, and probably be upset that you didn't reach out,
That's right.
right?
It'd be like, what in the hell, right?
Yeah.
We're going to the
Why are
wine
you
shop.
trying
We're
to go
going for a
scope?
walk up the hill. We're going to the hawker stand. What on earth? Why? I had to say no to some things when I was over there because
Oh, I'm sure.
and that's not a bad thing. It was a
Oh,
positive.
it's great.
Yeah.
It's great when that generosity is reciprocated. All right. Well, as we wind up, I have a couple of just closing questions.
Sure.
So, one is, what is one leadership lesson that you continue to learn over and over again?
Yeah, I think the biggest one for me is this being honest and the power of honesty. Saying what you know, saying what you think, and not trying to fool somebody because darn it, people are going to know when you're trying to fool somebody or be fooled. I think the environment around us, especially in the US, but not just exclusively the US, at the moment is so steeped in sort of dishonesty or in it's still so steeped in I'm going to say something and I'm going to speak it even if it isn't true. I'm going to speak something and make it true, that individuals tuning forks are all attuned to listen for things that are dishonest. Maybe despite what social media cues would tell us, I think people are so very much in tune with things that are dishonest. They're not immune to it. And so
Right.
even more so than when we were working, this being super honest, it's the one thing that leaders can do to advance their leadership mindset. And I guess maybe the secondary one is what we talked about with respect to cultivating an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset. You mentioned the book, right? Ezra and Derek Johnson's book. Read it. It's wonderful. It has to do with politics in the US. So if you're not interested in that, maybe take it
Yeah.
with that grain of salt. But the mindset behind it, the notions behind it are and the lessons that Ezra and Derek talk about with respect to politics as the material are worth it and applicable in any scenario, right?
Right. I agree. Yeah. I'll put the link to that.
Yeah, highly recommended.
Yeah. The next question is maybe a little preface. So, my approach to leadership is that leadership is a mindset, not just as a position.
Yeah.
And since you're retired and don't have a quote formal, maybe leadership position, is why I'm prefacing this. What is the one word that would describe your leadership mindset right now?
Yeah. So I guess I would use the word authentic. And whilst I don't have a team or a company that I'm working for, what I have done, spent a lot of time focusing on in the time that I left, is I've tried and hopefully been successful at cultivating relationships with people. Spent a lot more time working with and working on friendships, working with people to understand where they are and connect with them. This is something that you and I did together, but many of our colleagues whilst we were working. But when you're not working, you have more of an opportunity to work with people sort of where they are. Frankly, by the way, a lot of males in U.S. society have a tendency not to have a lot of friends. And I think that's a shame. So I'm trying in retirement to cultivate a lot of friendship relationships, different types of friendships. The only way that I think that works is by being authentic. So
Mhm.
it's maybe not leadership in terms of classically leading a team, but it's leadership in
Leading
terms of
yourself.
leading yourself. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love that. All right. One other question is, what is a top lesson you may have learned from soccer
Uh-huh.
that applies to leadership?
Yeah. So soccer, football, real football. I do like American football, but soccer is a team sport. I actually gave a talk when I was working it was in the US before I took the job in Malaysia. That was a talk designed around what we can learn from soccer. The talk was centered around two videos. I showed two videos of two goals. The point is the outcome that you're striving for on a soccer pitch is to score goals. Yeah. Both of these situations that I showed resulted in the outcome that was desired. A goal was scored. One was an incredible individual goal. I think it was Messi. This is before Messi was Messi, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
2011. I think one of them was Messi weaving through 4 or 5 defenders and burying one in the top corner, leaving the keeper stranded. And what was interesting about that particular play was he had options to share the ball in that particular goal scenario, and he chose not to. He chose to wind through three or four defenders and score himself. Amazing goal, lauded as one of his best, I think, at the time, is when he was playing for Barcelona. The other video that I showed was of an incredible team goal. I believe it was Croatia in the World Cup in 2010. I can't remember the team, but I think it was the Croatian national team in the 2010 World Cup that was held in South Africa. If I'm not mistaken, the lead up to that goal was a 24 or 25 pass move, and every outfield player on the Croatian national team touched the ball.
Hmm.
And the result, by the way, was like a simple tap in. It wasn't some like individual screamer, like a belter of a goal. It was a tap in. And the lesson that I tried to teach from that is same outcome. One is usually seen as a better goal than the other. But look at the runners that didn't receive the ball in the Messi goal. They're still happy. They're still a part of the team. But how much do you think they're going to be willing to make a 60-yard lung busting run next time when he picks the ball up? They're probably not going
Yeah.
to follow him into the attacking zone because they are incrementally, maybe not fully convinced, but they're incrementally believing that they may not receive the ball and it's not worth my time. As compared to the amazing team goal. Again, I'll go back and look and maybe we can post it. I can post the videos. I'll
Yep.
find them. I think it was Croatia. Those guys shared the ball and their movement was amazing. Their passing was amazing. Their vision was amazing. And they all worked together and they ended up getting the same result. And that's going to encourage all of those guys to be able to play together like that. So that's the lesson. But the lesson is share the ball.
Share the ball. I love it. I love that story. Well, thank you for joining today, Chris.
My
And this
pleasure,
has been a
Peters. And
great catch up.
great to catch up with you and enjoyed the chat. I was telling my wife, these chats bring back all the good feels from working at a
Yes,
big company in a good way. So I appreciate that.
it is. And hopefully some people can take some lessons from you.
Indeed.
So thank you for your time.
My pleasure. All the best.
Thank you for listening to part 2 of my conversation with Chris Kelly. A few lessons stand out for me. First, trust is built through action, not by managing impressions. Often the actions that matter most are the simple, consistent ones, like the example Chris shared of complying with the systems of control. These quiet, unsexy behaviors build confidence over time. 2. Honestly assessing your capability set, both where you are now and where you want to take it next, strengthens trust and respect from those who rely on you. It reminds me of the yes if practice. A yes if practice is where you respond to a request yes if, and then you follow it by trade-offs that allow you to make a committed yes. For example, trade-offs on scope, timing, or quality can be offered to allow you to create a yes. Chris's example of being asked to take on the new chip design is a perfect illustration. His yes if response protected the team and built credibility. 3. Access to leaders is essential during uncertain times. Too often, leaders retreat when they don't have all the answers. Staying open is more critical than being definitive. One practice I have found helpful is listing what you know and what you don't know and share both. You will say, I don't know, or I can't share that yet many times, but that openness prevents the team from filling in the blanks. And as they do, it typically is a worst case scenario. And finally, I really enjoy Chris's share the ball story. Outcomes need to be reached, but the long-term impact to the team dynamics can build momentum as you lead the team into what's next. Thanks for listening to Roar Mindset, Leading Through Chaos. Disruption isn't going away, but you can embrace it and turn it into an advantage. Until next time, stop fighting disruption, lead with clarity, and thrive in uncertain times.